Hi, this is Coach Gary Hall Sr. at the Race Club, broadcasting live from Coronado, California on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. This will be our last telecast live during the swimming competition of the Olympic Games. We will have a live broadcast on Tuesday, which we will continue weekly, indefinitely, with your support. And if you like what you see with this broadcast, if you like what you see with our free videos on YouTube, and you want more, then subscribe to our channel. Hit the join button on the Race Club YouTube page and join us, and you'll get additional content. It'll be exclusive, additional videos. It'll be exclusive to our elite members that join in. So today we're going to recap the events of the last 2 days. We're going to, starting with the women's 200 breaststroke. We're going to recap the men's 200 backstroke, the women's 100 freestyle. Then we're going to go over the men's 200 IM, the men's 100 fly, the women's 200 backstroke, the women's 800 free, and the mixed medley relay. So we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to jump right in right now. Don't forget to ask any questions or throw out any comments throughout the show, and we will get to all your questions and comments at the end. But let's jump into the women's 200 breaststroke. And this one really, to me, was an exciting race. First of all, I want to go out publicly and tell you that I'm so happy that I was wrong about Lily King. I am so glad that she went what she did. Swam in a brilliant race for her. Great strategy. She's a fast breaststroker. She had a race plan, and what really impressed me is the toughness of her second 100 in that race. Has to go out to Tatiana Schoenmaker, who had 3 brilliant races, all at or near the world record. The last one being under the world record, the first woman in history to go under 219, 218.95. But I want to point out something about Tatiana's breaststroke that we picked up, and I had never seen before. Actually, I had heard about this. First woman that I heard about doing this was Molly Hannes a few years ago. Didn't pay a lot of attention, but there's something that Tatiana does that's different than every breaststroker out there in the race. We have some footage here of the Olympic trials in South Africa, but what I want you to note is how long she holds her head underwater before she lifts it for the breath. She keeps it down longer than anybody else. Now, why is she doing that? Well, there's less drag underwater than there is once that head starts to lift out of the water. So what she effectively does there is gets more acceleration from her pull, more velocity, higher velocity from her pull, and she keeps her head out of the water for the minimal amount of time. You notice how quickly she comes up. She comes up a long ways and goes down, but she doesn't stay out of the water very long. And I think that's a really great technique that she's using. She has a wide pull, great kick, they all do, but it's really the length of time, and we're talking tenths of a second here, that she holds that chin down, gets her arms around the corner through the pulling motion, lifts it up, comes down. And she swam also a brilliant race. Just to look at the different strategies in this race was interesting, because you have Tatiana, who, there's 2 ways to swim a 200 breaststroke. You either try to hold stroke rate, like Rebecca Soni did in 2012, and Lily did here, or you wind it up, and that's what Tatiana did. She swam a very comfortable 35 stroke rate in her first 50, not going like Efimova would, like 28 stroke rate in the first 50, but she was comfortable at 35. Then she drops it down to a 32 stroke rate. She goes up to a 39 stroke on the third 50 and finishes at a 42 stroke rate until the last 10 meters, where she ups it to 47. Now keep in mind, she's a 58 stroke rate during her 100, so she has the capacity to get that stroke rate up. So what are her splits? Again, we're looking for that second, third, and fourth 50 to be equal. 35.42 on 50 number 2, 35.42 on 50 number 3, and a little slower, 36.47 on 50 number 4 in the last 50. Now remember, in order to keep the time the same in breaststroke, the stroke rate has to come up. If you're going to hold the same stroke rate, because of the fatigue in the legs, and because it's such a difficult stroke, there's really no vacation time in breaststroke, you're going to go slower on each 50, and that's exactly what happened with Lily. Her stroke rates were 40, 40, 42, and 42 until the end. She jumps up to 46 to finish. But her last 350s are 35.2, 36.1, 37.3. So you can see she's slowing down. Annie Laser, also a brilliant strategy in her race. She swam her race. She didn't get carried away. She didn't let Tatiana or Lily take her out. She starts out at a 32 stroke. This is a little more reminiscent of Efimova, except not quite as extreme. So she goes 32, 36 stroke rate, 39 stroke rate, 43, and then finishes at 45 in the last 10 meters. Her 50 times on 2, 3, and 4, 35-8, 36-1, 36-1. Very evenly split. Great job for her to earn the bronze medal. Great girl. U.S. takes second and third, but hats off to Tatiana. She proves she's the greatest 200 breaststroker in the world today. Just one little note here, and that is that Annie got her fingernail on the wall before Chikhanova from Russia, who was 4/100ths of a second behind her. So she really had a little bit of somebody watching over her. She just lost her father just a few months ago, and maybe her dad was watching over her, making sure she got that medal, but great finish for her. Then we got the men's 200 backstroke, and this was also a very interesting race, and I was hoping that we'd see Ryan reverse the tables on Rieloff, but he didn't quite have the speed to be able to do it. Rieloff won the race, and I want to tell you, because I'm a big fan of stroke rate and backstroke, but neither Rieloff nor Ryan Murphy swam with the kind of stroke rate that we've seen in the past. And I'm going to show you some video of Aaron Pearsall, and that'll tell you why I think stroke rate is so important in backstroke. But Rieloff goes 77, 75, 79, 83 stroke rate. So he's kind of winding his stroke rate up a little bit at a time. He splits on the last 350s, 28.3, 28.7, 29.3. So he's not quite even there, but he's very close. His winning time, gold medal time, 1:53.27, almost a second and a half slower than what Aaron Pearsall did in 2000, I believe, 9 or 10 when he broke the world record. But when Aaron swam, he was holding 86 stroke rate all the way through until the last 50 when he bumps it up to 92. And this is, I think, a video of, is this Pearsall here back in 2010, I believe? 2009. 151.9, and that record still stands today. But what I really loved about Aaron, I mean, he used to say, grip it and rip it, and that's what he does. Just keeps the stroke rate relentless on all 450s, very constant, very machine-like. Look how hard he throws the arms back. And you see that today, too, with Rieloff and with Murphy, how hard they throw the arms back into the water. That's a coupling motion that's making the end of their pulling hand stronger. It gives them that extra power. Lochtey's over there in lane 2 when he was a bit younger there. Great backstroker as well. But here you see Aaron, just leggings on. This was at a time when the whole bodysuit was legal, but they just wear leggings in the backstroke. Don't like the restriction of the rotation that they had, so they just wear the legs. But here he is at 86 all the way through this 200, and he finishes in the last 50. He just blitzes at home with a 92 stroke rate all the way home. And the point is that Ryan, who goes up a 75, 78, 81, 86 stroke rate, also winds it up. And if Ryan's able to hold that 86 stroke rate all the way through, he's also going to go. He's going to be a gold medalist here. But, you know, I'm not here to criticize him. I'm just saying that, you know, sometimes you have to look back at what the great swimmers did and pay attention to how well they did their races. Hats off to Luke Greenback. Now, he is a higher stroke rate guy from the UK. Greenbank ends up at 154.72 for the bronze medal. He's out in 55.7, back in 59 flat. His last 350s, 28.7, 29.3, 29.6. So not quite equal, or even, but his stroke rates were higher, 95, 93, 87, and then he finishes at 90 with the last 10 meters into the wall at 93. Great swim for him. Doesn't have as strong a kick. That's why his stroke rates were higher than Rieloff and Murphy. And I want to tell you that Rieloff out kicks underwater's Murphy, and that's pretty hard to do. There aren't many people in the world that can do that. Rieloff has an amazing kick, and that's one of the reasons why he can go so fast at a slower stroke rate. Now let's go to the women's 100 freestyle. What a race that was, and the one I thought would win won, and that was Emma McKeon. She's having a great meet. She is hot. She is swimming well. She's swimming confidently. under 52, almost a full second ahead of the winning time from Rio. 51.96, down in 25 flat, back in 26.8. What I love about Emma, and you can see this. I don't know if you brought up that one photo that I showed where she's hitting. I want to show you this. If you watch her stroke, when she comes down harder than any of the other athletes. And I took this picture of here. She's just coming down with the right arm here. But you see that splash in the middle of the screen. That's from Emma. No one else is making that kind of splash with the arm coming down. Why is that important? The energy of that arm coming down is what we call a coupling motion that augments or increases the power of her pulling hand. So she's coming down with a vengeance with both sides, on both sides. You see the same thing with Caleb in the men's side on the freestyle. But Emma goes down at 25 flat, 26.8 coming back, under 27 seconds. Really steady. I mean, she's at 105 stroke rate going down, 105, almost exact same stroke rate as Kyle Chalmers. Interesting that they have the same stroke rate. Very similar technique. All the Australians are breathing every fourth, which I'm not a huge fan of, but maybe I'm going to have to rethink that because they're all swimming fast. Kate Campbell, who got third in this race, has only a 90 to 92 stroke rate, really long. So when she breathes every fourth, she's actually getting fewer breaths than Emma, who's got a 105 stroke rate. But the surprise of this Olympics to me is Shobhan Howie, who had a great swim. She starts the first 50 at 115 stroke rate and then drops down in the second 50 at 103. She can't quite hold it long enough, otherwise she probably would have won. But she goes 25.1 going down, almost exact same time as Emma, and comes back in 27.1. She didn't die, and she's also in every fourth breather, breath every fourth stroke. She holds her last 5 strokes into the wall. And she's hurting at the end, you can tell that, but she still finishes with a very respectable 27.1. The person I had predicted to get third was Penny Alexiaks, and she was 6/100ths or 7/100ths behind Kate Campbell. It was really close. She was coming up at the end. Penny is 4-2 breathing pattern, breathes 2 in a row, and then holds 4. She gets a little bit more breathing in there, but she didn't quite get out fast enough to catch Kate at the end. So then we go on to the men's 200 IM. Oh, this was a hard one to watch, I tell you. And, it's almost like this is coming, but you don't want to really see it happen. And I felt so bad. We all felt bad for Michael Andrew, who just couldn't get it home. I didn't know the Chinese guy, and I didn't really know what to predict in this race, but I had selected Duncan Scott to win this race. I picked him. And I was pretty close. I was like 155 flat to win. He didn't quite win, but I have to tell you that I didn't expect Xun Wang, the Chinese swimmer that I knew nothing about and never seen him swim. I didn't expect him to outsplit Duncan Scott on the freestyle leg, and that's exactly what he did. He came home in 27.3, just blistered home. And I thought at the 150, Duncan Scott had him. Duncan Scott comes back in 27.4 for the silver medal, 155.28. And the guy predicted who would get second was from Switzerland, Jeremy Duplanche. So I take a little credit there. And I really didn't know, except I liked the way he swam. I thought he swam a good semifinal, and I thought he would be right in there. He's 156.1, and he came home in 28.4. He was right with him at the 150. Didn't quite have the speed, the finishing speed. But the question the whole world's asking is, how does a guy who is so good as Michael Andrew, who swims a 21.4 50-meter freestyle, come home in 30.6 or 30.69, really 30.7. And you cannot blame that on his inability to swim freestyle, because he just can. The two splits in this race that I just didn't think were up to speed for him was the backstroke. He's an extremely good backstroker. Didn't split really very well there. I think he was 30 plus, and most of those guys are 29s. And then his breaststroke is always good. He's so long and he's so fast, but he just turned into rigor mortis on the last 50. And that's all about training. It's not his ability, it's not his talent, it's not anything other than just training. And I think if he trains differently, the guy could be the greatest IMer in the world. Anyway, hats off to Jeremy from Switzerland, one of the few Olympic swimming medals. And ironically, they get two in the same day. They get one in the 200 IM and they get another in the 100 fly. So the men's 100 fly turned out also to be an exciting race. It didn't look like it was going to be the way Caleb went out. He was actually out a little bit slower than, sorry about the noise, we got a lot of helicopters here in Coronado flying over. I'll wait till this passes, but Caleb went out pretty much what we expected. And, here Christoph looks up and sees, at Caleb's waist. You have to get used to that when you swim against Caleb. But here he's a half a body length behind him at the start. Caleb turns at 23 flat, and Christoph turns at 23.65. So, really, Christoph is not going down any slower. He's not swimming any slower than Caleb. He's probably starting a half a second behind and finishing the first 50 a half second behind. But then they make the turn. Now, how good is a guy that has a bad turn and a bad finish and still breaks the world record and wins, wins the gold medal? I mean, it reminds me of Phelps in 2008, where he wins the gold medal in 200 fly with water filling up his goggles. I mean, he's that good that he can win that race with a couple of mishaps. And here in the 100 fly, this was from the trials, but you see Caleb actually go long on this turn. He went even longer than that at the Olympics, but he made the turn. He was 22.8 at the trials, 23 flat, but he comes home well. Consider his stroke rate, 59 going down, 57 going back. I mean, that's a fast stroke rate. Usually anything over 60, we think in terms of 50s, not hundreds, but he's right up there. And he finishes the last 5 or 6 strokes into the wall. Actually, it's 5 strokes, no breath, and that wins him the gold medal. You don't realize how fast Milak is coming up on him, but all of a sudden you realize in those last 5 or 6 strokes, wow, this is going to be a tight race. In fact, if they have 2 more meters to go, Milak wins the race. So Milak 23.6, back in 26 flat. Dressel 23 flat, not his best going down, although it's still faster than everybody else, and 26.4, still very fast coming back. And I just have to hand it to Dressel, who, he's a fast twitch guy, but he gets home so well, even though, he's tightening up, the lactate level's up there, but he puts that head down, gets the stroke rate up, and doesn't breathe going into the wall. Congrats to Noe Ponte from Switzerland, who went 50.7. He was 23.6 going down and 27 flat coming back. So great race, kind of what we expected. By the way, the stroke rates on Christoph, he was 48 in the 200, 51 going down, and 53 coming back. Even slower than what you normally expect in the 100. 100 is usually a 52 to 56 type stroke rate, but Caleb's 59 going down, 57 coming back. Now the women's 200 back, Emma McKeon, having an amazing meet, again showed her brilliance. Really well swum race, 2:04.68, best time for her. Not a world record, which I would have loved. I think we all would have loved to have seen Reagan in that race, especially after Reagan had such a beautiful 200 fly. I think she would have had a great 200 back. Just didn't have it going for her at the trials, so she didn't get in there. And the Americans didn't medal, unfortunately for us, but 2:04.68. And Kaylee goes out in 101.5 and back in 103.1. I mean, what a second 100 she has. She's a slower stroke rate. She's not going at the stroke rates that Reagan would go at. She's much slower, but strong kick, great underwaters. And her second, third, and fourth 50s, 32.1, 32 flat, 31 flat. So she comes home and just blisters the last 50, and that wins the gold medal for her. Second was Kylie Moss from Canada, who also had a great swim for her. I think that's her best time, I'm pretty sure, 2:05.42. She goes out a little faster at 1:00.07, comes back in 1:04.7. Her last 350s, 31.4, 32.1, 32.5. Slows a little bit, I think maybe a little bit different strategy, but that's kind of what Kylie likes to do. She likes to go out and try to hang on. And I want to say congrats to Emily Seebohm. I think Emily was sort of a sentimental favorite for a lot of people because she had a really bad Olympics in Rio. I don't think she medaled there. Was expected a favorite. Didn't have a good meet, and she came back. Here she was kind of like there, but nobody really expected her to medal, and she has a great swim for her in the 200, going 206.1, out in 102.1, back in 104 flat. Her 50s were split second, third, and fourth, 32.2, 32.5, and 31.4. She also came back, as the Australians always seem to do in the last 50, with a great split. Both the Americans finished just out of the medal stand. Ryan White and Phoebe Bauer. Ryan was just 1/100th of a second faster, almost the identical time, 206.39. Phoebe 206.4. We were pulling for them to at least get a medal, but unfortunately they didn't quite have the speed at the end to do it. Then we went on to the women's 800 freestyle, and this was a race that we kind of expected to pan out, just like the 400 and the 200, except this time Katie had the edge. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. And I think Katie has, I think RN has more speed. There's no question about that. Katie has stroke rate, and stroke rate sometimes in the longer events turns out to be really important, and I think it did. It was really her strategy. She has one strategy: go out and try to hang on, and it's always worked for her. Usually she demoralizes the competition by getting so far ahead. She's not at that stage in her life or in her career that she can do that anymore, but she did it here. She went out, her first 50 of this 800 free was at 100 plus stroke rate. For her, that's really fast. And then she settles into a 90 stroke rate pretty much for the entire race. Ariane, who's over on this side of the pool, when you watch the video, who's finishes a little over a second behind her at 8:13. Katie wins in 8:12, well off her world record, but she's not swimming at that same level that she was. But she wins, and Ariane finishes 8:13.83, holding an 86 stroke rate for most of the race. Remember, she was 90 to 92 in the 400. She was 100 in the 200 stroke rate wise. She drops it down here, but her breathing pattern is always less than what I think it should be. And although she's, how can you criticize her? You really can't. It's hard to. But the longer the race goes, the more you need that oxygen. And so she goes 3 breaths in a row every cycle and then holds for 4. On an 800, I think it catches up to her. And although she was fairly steady, she drops her stroke rate down toward about 500, down into the 81 range. If she's able to hold 86, which is pretty hard for her, and she's the only one in there sustaining a 6-beat kick the whole way. The others are going to a 2-beat kick. She probably wins 800, but she can't hold that. And I think the breathing may have a little bit to do with it. I don't know, but it's the way she trains. Bronze medal went to Simona Quadrella from Italy at 8:18.35. She's a 100 stroke rater, fast stroke rate, 2-beat kicker. We were pulling for Katie Grimes. She didn't have quite as good a swim as she had in the prelims. She went 8:19. If she'd gone a prelim time, I think she would have gotten the bronze medal or right there close. But she has a great first Olympics, great experience. She may be the future of distance swimming for the United States. So good swim for her. Congratulations to Katie, and just happy to see her win those 2 gold medals in the 800 and the 1500. All right, then we had the mixed medley relay, and Great Britain proved that they are dominant in the relays, and especially this one. Great Britain wins it handily, 3:57.58 world record. China second. Australia gets third. I didn't really even know exactly what to predict or how to predict this race, but I want to tell you one thing, and it really disturbed me a little bit, in that the next time the Olympics comes around, the Team USA needs to put a mathematician on their staff, because if you do the math on this, you really can't just look at the individuals and say, well, she won a gold medal, so therefore we should need to put Lydia Jacobi on the relay because she was the fastest breaststroker. It doesn't really work like that. And the way you really have to think through these races, this is a different strategy altogether. And what you have to do in the mixed medley relay is look at the difference between your fastest male and your fastest female. Now, across the board, in all the countries of the world, the greatest differential between the fastest male and the fastest female is in breaststroke. For most countries, that difference is 7 or 8 seconds. For the United States, it's over 6 seconds. Well, all the other 3 legs, the fly, the free, and the backstroke, the differential is usually 5 to 6 seconds, or maybe barely over 6 seconds. So there was only one country in the world who put their woman in the breaststroke leg, and that was the United States. And if you look at the United States, who finished 5th, I believe, they were well out of it. They weren't even close. But you can't look at any individual performance and say, oh, that was really, cost them a lot. I mean, look at Lydia, who split 105 flat with her goggles around her mouth. I mean, how disconcerting would that be if you jump in at the Olympics and have that happen? But she still swam a good race, but it's just the wrong strategy. And so now you're saying, well, who should they have put in the breaststroke? Well, they're not going to swim Michael Andrew probably, because he just came out of the 50 and he's got the 100 breaststroke tonight for the men's medley relay. And he's not having a great meet. But they got 2 other guys, Nick Fink and Andrew Wilson, who can both, in fact, Andrew Wilson went, I think, a 59 flat in the prelims of this. He's probably going to go 58.5. So you put one of those 2 guys on. And what about the freestyle? Now you got to put a woman in the freestyle leg. Who are you going to use? And is Caleb going to be able to come back after 100 fly and swim another 100 fly? Yeah, he will. He's that tough. He would have been a 49 low probably on the fly leg. Who would have gone freestyle? Abby Weitzel. Well, she just got out of the 100 or the 50 free. Would you put her up in the mixed medley relay in the free leg? The answer is yes. Why? Because she's tough. And guess what? Emma McKeon did the same thing. She got out of the 50 free, went 24 flat, and went 51.7 split on the relay just, half an hour later. So I think if the U.S. had done a little bit different strategy, they would have done better. Would they have medaled? Would they have won? They wouldn't have won. But could they have medaled? I don't know. It would have been close. But I guess you have to sometimes look at these races and rethink how you do them. And I don't think the U.S. really thought it through. Or I think they would have had a completely different relay. Anyway, hats off to Great Britain. Some pretty great splits on that relay for them. They're strong. They're having I have to say, Great Britain and Italy get the most valuable player awards for this Olympics. And you never know quite which country is going to show up and have an amazing meet. But those 2 countries, and there have been other, Australia also is having a great Olympics. The U.S. is having, for the most part, a really, really strong Olympics. They just had a few that just didn't come the way they expected. But look at Italy and look at and look at the UK and what they're doing, and it's consistent, and they've been really, really strong all the way through. So let's take a minute to do a preview. You can see the splits there on the medley relay, the mixed medley. Really great splits for Great Britain, and China was second, and then Australia third. Really close between those 2, just a tenth apart. Italy was 4th, a little bit behind, maybe a half second. United States well behind there, and the Netherlands. But look at those splits. I mean, Husk was a little slower than I thought she would be. Should have been 55 something. But you got to remember, she's way back there swimming in a lot of waves, and that makes it hard too. Would have loved to see Murphy lead off with a sub 52, but he didn't. Tonight I hope he does, because they're going to need that. They're going to need a 52 flat or better from him lead off. And then Dressel finishes in 46.9. It wouldn't matter. The race was over by that time. He didn't have the ability to catch them at that point. All right, so let's preview the men's 50 freestyle, because I think this is always the splash and dash, the most exciting race of the whole Olympics, in my opinion. And I'm a little biased because my son loved that event, swam it a few times. But I don't see anybody beating Caleb. And Caleb last night kind of coasted to a 21.4 after his world record fly. I don't think he breaks the world record tonight. I think he's just too hard with 8 fast guys in the finals. Look at what it takes, 21.78 to get into the finals. So there's, basically 0.3 of a second differentiating the fastest and the slowest qualifiers. Now, 0.3 of a second in a 50 is a lot, so don't get me wrong. And Caleb is capable of going way under 21.4. But I don't see him breaking the world record. I predict tonight he's going to go 21.1. He's going to win it. And I think Florent Manadou, who swam a pretty good race, dropped down. He's tough, and I think he's going to be right next to him. He'll get the silver in 21.3. And my prediction that Bruno Freitas, Bruno has, I think more times under 21 or under 22 seconds than any swimmer alive. It's like 70 some swims he's been under 22 seconds. He can do 21 in his sleep. Question is, can he go 21.4 or better? And I think he can. If he does, I think he gets the bronze medal. Where does Michael Andrew finish in here? I hope he goes 21.4 or something, but right now I don't think he's going to beat Bruno or Florent. The women's 50 free, I'm going to go with Emma. Emma's having a hot meet. She's really swimming well. She's confident. And I am going to predict she goes under 24. She's going to win this in 23.99. Look how close this one is. I mean, this is crazy. This is ridiculous how, 24.00 to 24.32. It's almost the same as the men, 0.3 of a difference. So throw a dart at this to see who gets second. First, second, and third, really you could throw the dart for, because I think this goes down to, the final finish, who gets a great start, who gets out there. But these are my predictions. Number one, Emma's going to be winning it, 23.9. I predict Pernille's going to get second. Pernille Bloom from Denmark, 24.08 is what I have. And third, although this might surprise you a little bit, I'm going to go with Renomi, who's just a warhorse. And she went 23.9 just a couple months ago, and she's a gamer. And I see her getting up for this. She's going to go 24.1. I wouldn't even be surprised if she wins the darn thing. But she's kind of in the outside. She's an outside streaker here. She's going to be 24.10 in the outside lane, getting a bronze medal. Who else in there would I like to see? Well, I'd like to see Kasia Wasik in lane 2 get a medal or even win. She could, because she's a race clubber. She came over here and had a little instruction with us. And she swims for Poland. She lives in Las Vegas. Great gal. Love to see Kasia win that. I don't know if she will, but she's right in there, 24.26, and she's having a great year. She's just really swimming well. So that's going to be a fun race to watch. We got the men's 1,500. It's the same four guys we saw in the 800. They're going to be duking it out in this race. And your guess is probably as good as mine, but I am going to go with the guy that won this race 5 years ago in Rio, because he's just that tough. And I think Gregorio Paltrinieri is going to win this in 14.37. His strategy is pretty simple. I'm going out, try to hang on. I have one speed, try to catch me. And so he's going to take an early lead, as he did in the 800. The question is, can these guys catch him? I think it's a little different outcome than we saw in the 800. I'm predicting that Wellbrock, Florian Wellbrock from Germany, who's a little bit of a plower, hip-driven guy, he's not going to have the great finish at the end, but I think he hangs on for second. It's going to be a close race, and he goes 14.38. And I think Bobby Fink is going to, pull out a bronze medal in here. He could do the same thing here as he did in the 800. He could come back in that last 100, and he's got more speed than all of them. He proved that in the 800. If he's close, watch out for him to win this thing in the last 100, just like he won it in the last 50, being a body length behind with 50, coming home in 26 plus in the last 50, 26 low, actually, I think. So I have Romanchuk going fourth, but gosh, you could juggle those four guys any way you want. It's going to be a really exciting race, and I think it's going to be a strategy, and it's going to come down to the last 50, maybe 100, to see who wins it. So look forward to a great race there. Then we got the two medley relays. So we've got women's first, men's second. Well, the women, I don't think anybody's going to beat Australia. I don't see how they can. The U.S. almost didn't even get in. They are swimming in, oh no, I'm sorry, that was on the men's side. The women's side, they're in lane 5, so they're in good position. They're seated second, and Canada's in the middle. Could Canada pull off a great upset here? It's possible, but I don't think they will. I think the times are going to go a lot faster. Most of these countries did not swim their 4 best swimmers in the prelims. Some of them had to, like Italy on the men's side, to get into the finals. They swam their 4 fastest guys. So I don't see them winning the men's, although they're seeded first. But I'm going to pick Australia to win the women's medley relay, 3:51.6. Not a world record. Again, I think they could, but I don't think it's going to go world record. U.S. second at 3:52.2, and I've got China predicted to be third at 3:52.6. Canada going to be fourth, close, right in there. It's going to be a tight race with those 4 teams, but I still think Australia, especially, with the way Emma McKeon is swimming, putting her on the end, I don't see anybody beating her at the end. In the men's side, it's hard to argue against Great Britain winning this. On paper, on math, I just don't. I mean, we've learned in the 200 or the 800 free relay for women that paper doesn't always work. It doesn't always tell you what's going to happen. So there's a lot of emotion involved. But Great Britain is having such a great Olympics, and all of their swimmers are doing well. When you put Adam Peaty and you've got Duncan Scott on the end going 46 mid to maybe even 46 low, I just don't see how the Americans can beat them. And they're in the outside lane now, and that's going to be a challenge for them. Maybe a good thing and maybe a bad thing. But I see Britain winning this in 3:27.8. I see USA coming second in 3:28.2. And I'm going to go with Italy for third. Italy swam well, and they swam their 4 fastest guys, but I think they can go faster. They've got 4 really good swimmers in there. They've got their backstroker who's been 52.2. They've got breaststroker who's 57.7 or 8, or he's been 57 mid on the relay. Their flyer is 50 point low. And then their freestyler, blanking out, Moresi, is it? I forget his last name. Yeah, the freestyler has been 46 high. So I think Italy's going to be really good in there. Those are my predictions. Don't know whether I'm going to be right or wrong because I'm never 100% sure, but it's going to be fun to watch. Don't forget, next Tuesday we will do a recap of all those final events tonight that we didn't get a chance to recap, but we will go over them on Tuesday. And now let's take some questions. One guy says, watch out for Ben Proud. Man, Ben's good. I mean, he hasn't been 21 low for a while. It's been a while since I don't know when he's last gone 21-1. I think it's his best time ever. But, that guy's capable. He throws down. He's got a great start, too, by the way. I think in this field, you'll see the best start from Caleb, and then the second best start probably from Ben Proud. He could do it. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. Someone says Caleb 21:05, Manadou 21:25. Might be right. I mean, I just don't think anybody's got the ability to catch Caleb once he gets up and he gets going. He's got clear water. His stroke rate's going to be in the 140-ish on the first half and maybe down to 135 on the second half. Watch for him to go 21 low. And if anybody beats him, I don't know how they do it. It could be Proud, it could be Manadou, but I don't think so. I think it's his race. Romanchuk stroke. Let's talk about Mikhail Romanchuk stroke, because I love one of the things he does, which nobody else is doing. He's a hybrid freestyler. But tonight in the finals, watch his right hand. He breathes right. Watch him come in and turn his little pinky down. And that's something we become really big on, especially in hybrid or hip-driven freestyle. And the reason is with the pinky down, you have less drag than with your palm down. And he's one of the only, Sun Yang did that, Michael Phelps did that a little bit, not completely, but Romanchuk flips that little finger all the way down. You'll see him come in, turn the little finger down. And, he's good enough. He could win this thing. I mean, it's going to be those 4 guys. I just happened to pick the ones I did. And maybe Paul Trineri hangs on, maybe doesn't. But I love Mikhail Romanchuk's stroke. And what I love about it is he buries his head after the breath. What I don't like about Florian is that he really doesn't get his head down enough. He's got an amazing kick, and he just plows. He goes all the way through. He's hip driven, stroke rate around 70, and he just goes. He's like a machine, but an amazing kick. The problem is he doesn't have the closing speed. So if this goes down to a last 50, Florian Wellbrock's not going to win the race. It's either going to be, it's either going to be Romanchuk, or if Bobby's close, Bobby's going to pull off the same kind of upset he did in the 800, and he's going to win it at the end. So Kevin Patrick thinks the men's going to win the medley relay. Why? Because we're the U.S. This is what we do in the Olympics. So God bless the USA. I hope you're right, Kevin Patrick. I hope you're right. If it happens, it will be, I think, looked at as one of the greatest accomplishments of the Olympic Games, because right now, to beat Great Britain in that is going to take a little bit less than a miracle, but not much less. Here's Caleb on the start. I wanted to show this because Thomas pulled this off. This was at the trials, but look where Caleb is. Caleb uses a weight back start. Michael Andrew, all you see is his red, white, and blue bathing suit on the lane next to him, lane 5. He uses a weight forward start. Caleb's reaction time is so fast. Usually you see the guys that are weight back getting off last, but not Caleb. He is so fast that he is well off the block before Michael Andrew toes ever leave the block. So, you could look at the 100 fly and the 100 free, and you could say, well, geez, if Caleb didn't have that start, he doesn't win either race. But guess what? The start is part of the race, and it's a huge part of the race in the 50s. So you got to give credit to Caleb, and it's not something you necessarily teach. He has the two most important things for a start. One is his vertical leaping ability, which is off the charts. It's in the 40s, 41, 42 inches. It's something crazy, which is way higher than most athletes, most swimmers especially. You're talking about LeBron-esque type, vertical leap. And he's got dolphin kick speed. And you see him hit the water a little further out than everybody else because of his reaction time. Those are all three things that are hard to teach. But you see him hit the water a little further out, but then from there, he just keeps building on the leak. And when he breaks out at 15 meters, he's going to be close to half a body length ahead of the greatest starters in the world. Now, Ben Proud, maybe not that much behind him, but everybody else is. And it's hard to catch him. When he's at that point, good luck catching up to him. But there on the trials, you could see he hits the water a little ahead, but he just keeps building on that lead with this amazing dolphin kick and breaks out. And he's got clear water. I was there watching this race at the trials. 140 stroke rate down to 135, 130 at the end. And he went 21.0 something there, 21.04. Maybe he gets under 21. I don't know. He's the only guy I think has a chance to do that, but I doubt he will. Do you think someone could still be successful in the 50 with a pop-off freestyle? No. Pop-off had 110 stroke rate and great kick, but no one's going to be able to go 21 flat or under 21 with 110 stroke rate. You just can't do it. And so that stroke rate just doesn't enable a human being to go fast enough. Now, kudos to Popov. I don't consider his 21.6 to be real, but I think his 21.9s were all real. He did that in 92. He did it several times. Never got it faster than that. But, with 110 stroke rate, 21.9 is a very fast swim. But you see all these guys, they're all at 120 or higher. I don't even know who has the slowest stroke rate in this heat, but I can assure you, Bruno Fratus is 140 stroke rate, high octane, 45-degree angle, cutting in, from the angle. Manadou is probably in the 125 range. Ben Proud in the 125 range. Those are tall guys. They're big guys. But nobody's going to be up there on stroke rate wise like Caleb and Bruno. They have the fastest stroke rates in the heat. Watch out for a Greek boy at the 53. You're right. I mean, he could do that. I don't know if he'll win, but I think he won the European Championships. And Christian Galakamev, I know I messed up the name. I'm sorry. I'm sure I mispronounced it. but I watched that guy. He's fast. He's not a super high octane freestyler. He's very vertical, but he has kind of a medium octane, very fast stroke rate, and very strong guy. Very good technique. His head is down really well. Notice that under the underwaters. Look at his head position. He could do it. I mean, I don't know if he goes 21.1 or 21 flat. I don't think he's that fast, but maybe he does. If any of these guys have the race of their life, they could win or they could be on the podium, and that's what it's going to take. For most people, it's better to try to dive like Caleb Dressel or like Brad Kennedy. They aren't that different. If you look at Brad's start, first of all, Caleb is the best starter in the world, and it's mainly not because of where he hits the water. I think Caleb and Brad probably hit the water pretty close to the same. I measured Brad on the velocity meter. He hits the water at 3.44 meters from the wall. And I've never measured another elite athlete that was over 3 meters. Now, Brad probably doesn't have as much vertical as Caleb, but he has better coupling energy than Caleb. Caleb is really good at lifting the head, then he puts it in alignment. He doesn't have quite as much energy in the arm motion, but he's got what I call a very large circular motion. Brad has bigger circle motion. Brad has a little more leg kick in the back leg. Bruno Fratus, who doesn't have a very good start because his vertical is not that great, uses a very similar type of start to Brad, but he just doesn't. He doesn't have the vertical, and he doesn't have the dolphin kick speed. So Bruno has to get up and swim just like Anthony Irvin used to. He can't win this race on the underwaters or the dive on the underwaters. So. They're both great starters. Brad didn't have very good swim yesterday. He was 22.2. I was a little disappointed. I was hoping he'd be under 22, and I'd love to have seen him at least in the semis. But he was in the outside lane, just didn't swim well. I know he's disappointed. So Tanny's the only person I've ever seen beat Caleb to the 15-meter, and that's possible. I've always dreamt of having a race with those two guys. I'm not sure Brad is at his very best right now. I think he was a better starter 4 years ago than he is now. He's still great at it, don't get me wrong. But I always had a dream of having a 25-yard swim race with Caleb and Brad. I have to say that I think Caleb wins that race only because he's a faster sprinter. His stroke rate is much faster than Brad's, and he's got a faster dolphin kick. So they both hit the water pretty close to the same, which is just amazing how they just fly through the air. Anyway, both great starters. Let's take another question here.
So we have a couple questions from earlier. One person asked if height and weight or height and wingspan matter more in sprints or long distance.
What I love about swimming is you can find tall guys in the 1500. You can find most of the guys in the 50 are tall, but not all. Caleb's 6'2". Bruno is, I'm not sure what Bruno is, probably 6'1". He's not that tall. And then you have Manadou, I think is 6'8". So more than the size, it's more of the anatomy and the physiology of these guys, what their fast twitch is, what their technique is, what their mindset is, and then the way they train. Those all matter. The beauty of swimming is it's not like gymnastics where you have to be 4'9" and weigh 75 pounds to be great at it, or basketball where you have to be 6'6" or higher to be competitive. All different sizes and shapes work in swimming. Now there's advantages and disadvantages to every morphology, to every human being. There are certainly drag issues that we don't have to contend with in other sports. So we see this a lot. I saw it with my own son. I think with Nathan Adrian, he got bigger and stronger and slower as a result of getting really big and bulky. We see it with Katie, who's gotten bigger and stronger and slower. And it's hard to keep the power at the same level as the drag. The drag will outstrip the power swimmers if they get too big. I call it the paradoxical strength of swimming. If you get too big, you actually get worse than if you're small. You look at a guy like David Popovich and how fast he is, and he's not a big, strong guy, but he's using great technique. He's got a strong kick, and he's got a really low drag coefficient, and he goes at 16, 47.3. Who can do that at 16? It's amazing. The guy's the future, probably, of the 100 and the 200. He was in the 50, didn't do well. He's just not a fast enough guy. He's not strong enough for the 50 yet. But that's what I love about this sport. There's not one size that fits everybody. Kind of have to take the athlete, figure out, are they better off with high octane? I mean, Caleb doesn't go straight arm because by bending, he can get his RPMs up a little higher. He can get the arms through faster. But he's still very high octane and very vertical. It's fascinating because there is no one size that fits all for everybody. I can tell you one thing about all these athletes, they are mentally tough. On the killer instinct scale, everybody in the finals tonight is a 9 or a 10 out of 10. So that is required to be at this level. Got another question here?
Yeah, do you think Milak has a chance at the world record in the 100 fly?
Yeah, I mean, he proved that yesterday. I mean, the guy just if he improved his start alone. I mean, he does something on the breakout in his fly, and somebody pointed it out to me, is he has this check swing. He doesn't kick through the breakout. If you go back to the 200 fly on the first turn, and you see, and I think it might have been in the semifinals, or it could have been the finals, but anyway, you see Leclos right next to him, and Leclos has an amazing kick. Okay, they both touch the wall almost at the same time. They come off the wall, and you see Leclos kick through the breakout, and Milak holds that kick through the breakout. And Leclos beats him on the breakout. There's no question that kicking through the breakout is faster. Now, I don't have the underwaters to see if Milak did that in the 100. If he did, maybe that's the difference between winning and losing or breaking the world record. The guy has the longest distance per stroke of any athlete in history, including Michael Phelps in butterfly. His strong upper body, strong kick, and you put the two together, and the guy just zooms with every stroke he takes. I mean, imagine he's at a 51 stroke rate, he comes back in 53, and Caleb's at a 59 stroke rate, coming back in 58, and they almost do the same time. And Caleb has got a great kick, and his upper body strength is, incredible. What's the difference? Well, Milak is taller, and he's got those long levers, and his length enables him to get more coupling energy out of a longer arm coming around. He has a great ascending trajectory. Both of them do, by the way. Caleb uses ascending trajectory as well in the recovery. So does Milak. I do think Milak breaks the world record in the 100 fly. I don't know when, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes next year. Wouldn't be surprised to see those two guys back at it again in Paris in 3 years in the Olympic final. And it may be a different outcome. We'll see.
And Milak's only 21, so.
Yeah, Milak's 21, and Caleb's, 23, maybe?
I think he's
Not sure. 23, 24. He's not very old. Those guys are, they're in it for a long time. We may see him in the Olympics. We may see him in LA. By then, there'll be others. That's my dog, by the way. That's Goose. He's keeping guard here.
You got a couple people in the chat who think Manadou is going to beat Dressel.
All right, well, you can have your opinion, but I'm going to go with Dressel. Florent's tough, and he's a gamer. He's at his very best in the highest pressure situations, and that's it tonight. So the difference is, when Manadou broke out in Rio, he didn't win in Rio, but I thought he was going to. He takes a breath, I think, in Rio, right in front of the flags, and I think he loses. It's interesting because my son took that same breath in 2004 and wins because of the breath. And I think Manadou, Florent probably loses to Anthony because of the breath. So I don't know. I just don't think coming from behind is going to be that easy for Florent to catch Caleb. He was kind of in clear water in Rio. In London, wasn't he in the outside lane? He was either in lane 1 or 2, but he was way over on the side, kind of just way out ahead. No one ever saw him over there. He just went out and won the race. It'll be harder for him to do that here, I think, in the lane that he's in, but never count that guy out for sure. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him pull it out. But I'm going with Caleb. I think Caleb wins, Manadou second, Bruno third. That's my prediction. So after the dive, someone should start dolphin kicks right when the leg's entering the water, or like Dressel gliding a little and then go with the kicks. So that's a great question, and that's one we're really studying. I've looked at dolphin kicks off the wall. In fact, I emailed Greg Troy during the training camp in Hawaii, and I said, Greg, I'm going to bring this back to your attention because I told Greg about this, is that when you come off a wall and you up kick right away as opposed to gliding, it's 1/10 of a second faster to 5 meters than when you take a short glide. If you take a long glide, it's 2/10 of a second slower than no glide at all. Now, when you come in on a dive, your first down kick is your feet entering the water. You get acceleration from that. The real question is when you take the next up kick, because your first down kick's already done. And you're right, Caleb does glide a little bit longer than others. He's a great streamliner. He doesn't glide very long, and then he's really fast on those kicks. He's tight and he's fast, and he makes those kicks happen quickly. Greg got back to me and he said, we'll play around with it, but Caleb is comfortable with his glide, and I don't think he wants to change it at this point. And I don't think he did. But I still think that if Caleb up-kicked right away off the walls, or any of them, any of these elite athletes up-kicked right away, they would be a little bit faster, 1/10 of a second. But that's all it takes to win or lose a race. I mean, look how many of these races at any first, second, third are won or being lost by less than 1/10 of a second. What other questions we got?
Not too many other questions. People agreeing with your criticism of the coach's relay decision in the mixed relays.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to be a critic. It's easy to be an armchair quarterback. But you really have, that's a different race than any other race. And you really have to look at differentials. What is important there is not who your best, whether you won the race or lost the race for the men or the women. It's really, what are your options and what's the differential between your fastest breaststroker, male and female, on your team? That's what it boils down. That's a math question. And if the U.S. had done the math on that, they wouldn't have swum those 4 swimmers. They just wouldn't have. And apparently every other country did the math because they all had male breaststrokers, and most of those guys were, I think Adam was 56.7 or something, and a couple, Kaminga was 57 mid, and what's the name of the Italian breaststroker?
Martin Nagy.
Martin Nagy was 57.7, I think. So, those guys are, they're just too, when you take a 105 and you look at the differential there, it's huge. You can't make up for that loss. So, and I'm not blaming Lydia, that poor girl. Gosh, what a heartbreak to dump her goggles at the second most important race of her life. Well, tonight might be the second most important. Last night might have been third. But anyway, God love her for going 105 flat with her goggles in her mouth. I can't even believe she did that. Any other questions here? Milok came back in 26 flat, 4,500. If you looked at the last 15 meters, I was actually surprised that it was only 45 seconds faster than Caleb. Caleb came home really well on that fly. 26 flat versus 26.4, but it's all in the last 15 meters. And that's when, Milok he's steady Eddie. He's like 53 stroke rate all the way back. It's like Phelps. It reminds me of Phelps. He's just a machine driving into the wall. Keeps up, his breath every stroke all the way into the wall. I don't think he holds his breath at the end. If he did, it was maybe one stroke. But just different strategies. And, you can say, well, gosh, if he had a start, he wins. True. But he doesn't. He's got to work on that start, in my opinion. He's got to work on his breakouts, too. Anything else?
Will Great Britain win that men's medley relay?
I got them down as number 1. I love to see the U.S. make the upset of the year and win this, and they could. You never count the Americans out, and especially with Caleb in there doing fly. But if Caleb wins a 50 and Caleb splits 48.9 in the fly, then I think they have a chance. Could he do that? Yeah, he could. And then they've got Zach Apple at the end. Zach has to repeat what he did on the 4x100, 46.6, or, Duncan Scott's going to, unfortunately, I think he's going to run him down if he doesn't. So, and then that's assuming the U.S. is ahead. They may go off even at that point. Be a great race. It's going to be fun if they both swim up to their potential, and I think they will. Ian Nguyen says, my narrow breaststroke kick gets no propulsion. I'm considering going wide. Sometimes you have to. You don't have any option. If you go narrow with your knees and you don't have internal rotation in your hip or pronation of your ankle, you're going to be a tomahawk chop going backwards, which means you're going nowhere. And breaststroke, if you don't get those toes pointed out, you got to have something to push with, even if it slows your stroke rate down. Look at Lydia Jacoby, 46 stroke rate, goes 104.9, wins the Olympic Games. You know, is she the best breaststroker out there? No. I mean, technique-wise, probably not, but she won, and she won with the technique that works for her. And I don't know that she goes really wide, but she definitely is not at the same cycle speed as others. She just kicks a mountain of water backward with her feet. She's got such great flexibility. But you have to use the technique that works the best for you. That's why we're here doing what we do, because you can't do the same technique with everyone. We have to help you figure that out, and that's what we do. And it's not easy. It takes some experimenting. It takes some practice. Sometimes it takes a whole season to experiment. The late breath breaststroke, which is new technique to me that I'm going to start teaching, which is what Tatiana's doing. I teach a late breath fly, which Joseph Schooling and Jack Conger and Luca Orlando are doing. Very few are doing that. But the physics tells me why that's a pretty good technique to use, but nobody's teaching that. So, you know, I think now I'm going to start working on late breath breaststroke technique like Tatiana. She's got something. I think it's really a smart way to swim. Any other questions?
We got a few more that came in about Laszlo Chet. What do you think of him still competing?
Laszlo is, you know, he's legendary, and he's past his prime. I think just the fact that he made the finals is awesome. And here's the guy that has the world record for the most second places, I think, of anyone in history. And if anyone, I think, in the world of swimming would love to have seen somebody win, it would have been Laszlo. But he's just past his prime. You know, the sad part is the 409 that Chase wins the 400 IM. I mean, a few years back in 2008 or 2012, and Laszlo probably could have done that time in his sleep. But, you know, it's even 4 years ago. Chase swims faster then and gets second place. He goes slower this time and wins. So sometimes you have to be in the world at the right place. I always felt bad for Ryan Lochte, who was one of history's greatest swimmers, who was born in almost the same year as Michael Phelps. And that was tough luck because, you know, having to swim against Michael, you know, every time in those IMs was a brutal, you know, race. And he gave him a great race usually, but Michael got the best of him most of the time, not every time, but most of the time. So sometimes just being in the right place at the right time. And Laszlo lived in the Michael Phelps, you know, Ryan Lochte era. So if he had been born a different time, he would have won a gold medal, but he didn't. And he'll always be remembered as one of the greatest swimmers of all time. Very versatile, great flyer, interesting fly technique, vertical recovery, went 150, I want to say 152, 200 fly, with this, what I call check swing on his first down kick, not his second down kick. He put all his eggs into the second down kick and just surged till he come down with great coupling in it, come high out of the water, vertical, throws the head down hard, comes down hard with his hands, and just zooms forward with a strong second down kick. What do you think about Sarah's comeback and her future in swimming? I don't know about her future, but, you know, and I don't know how old Sarah is. She's getting up there. I think it's remarkable, and I'm really pulling for her. I didn't predict her to medal tonight, although I'd love to see that happen. As most of you know, she broke her elbow, I think in February, and for her to come back and be at this level, and she went 24-1, I think, in the semis. She doesn't have to go much faster than that to win. She's going to be up against some really fast competitors, but she doesn't back down. And what I liked about it, she didn't have a particularly great start to me, but she swam a really fast race. And coming home, she was charging at the end. So if she's in contention with, you know, 15 or 20 meters to go, she could win it. I mean, she could go 23 high and win the whole thing. This is going to be a fascinating race. I don't know who wins this thing tonight, but we'll see. I mean, Emma, to me, is hot right now. She looks great. She's strong. Watch her entry. Look how hard she comes down with those hands. She makes this huge splash. Nobody comes down harder than her. I didn't check her stroke rate. In the 100, she was 105 down, 105 back. She's probably over 120. They're all pretty close to 120. Nobody's crazy fast in this final, I don't think, on stroke rate. Abby Weitzel's probably the fastest in here. Abby's another one, swam a great race yesterday. If she goes a little faster, who knows? She's a tough competitor. She could win it. So it'd be a really exciting race. Do I have an opinion on Michael Andrews 2IM? Yeah, I already gave it, so you'll have to look at the replay. But I'd love to see Michael maybe change his training because he could be the greatest 200 IMer in the world. But I think he's got to train differently to come home in the freestyle. It's not because he doesn't know how to do freestyle. He's one of the fastest freestylers in the world. He just doesn't have the aerobic capacity to come home after an amazing 150. He just can't get back. Lactate levels are too high, and he doesn't know how to. I mean, he trains with lactate. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't train enough aerobically to be able to finish the 200. It's a different race. His dad came up to me, by the way, just about a month before trials. He had just swum the 156, I think faster than he did in the Olympics in Mission Viejo, and he came home in 30 point or something, 29 high. It wasn't very fast, and his dad said, "How do I get Michael to come home fast?" And I said, "Peter, you got a son who may be the most talented swimmer in the world, but you got to train him for the 200. You can't fake your body into saying this is 450s in a row, because it's not. By the time you get to the third or the fourth 50, the body wakes up and realizes, hey, you're trying to trick me. This is not 450s. This is a 200." And that's what happens to Michael. I would love to see him, train a little different. I don't know if he will or not, but I think he's going to have to if he ever wants to win that 2IM or set the world record.
And one more question about taking a breath halfway through a 50 free.
The breath in the 50 is really the $50,000 question. The majority of the athletes you're going to watch tonight, and maybe all of them, will not take a breath in the 50. There are a few that do. I know that Freddie Bousquet used to take a breath. Gary Jr. took a breath. And then you say, well, wouldn't they have been faster without that breath? But not necessarily, because the aerobic system it kicks in at around, right around 20 seconds. And right at the last 3 or 4 strokes is when the aerobic system actually kicks in. And, also the other question is that I have with them is the air bubbles under the chest. If you take a breath in there toward the end, and I know Florent did that back in 2016, and I think it cost him. This is Caleb here, and not breathing at the trials. Michael Andrews not breathing. Anthony's not breathing. Most of the guys are not going to take a breath. And it's probably better, but I don't know. I saw Gary Jr. in 2004. It's a long time ago. Take a breath just outside the flags. Puts his head down, and I'm thinking to myself, why did he do that? But I know he always took a breath, and he puts his head down, and he has the fastest 4 strokes I've ever seen into the wall and wins the Olympic gold. He probably doesn't if he doesn't take that breath, because you see him starting to slow down, but he takes the breath, goes zip, 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 zip. And I think some of that is the air bubbles he's releasing under his chest at the end. Anyway, I don't know. I don't have any proof of that other than that we've measured the air bubbles in the chest, and it's definitely less drag than when you're holding your breath. All right, I think we've outbid our welcome here. So thank you all for paying attention, for listening, and I look forward to tonight's races. Stay tuned. Don't forget on Tuesday, catch a recap of all these races. And we're going to go into a weekly show, picking one topic at a time. I'm not sure what it'll be for Tuesday, and Coach Thomas is going to help and produce that show for us with all the videos you see and all the data that he presents. Will all be up there. So we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Enjoy this last night of swimming, and go Team USA. Thank you.